Will my Social Security be taxed is a question that many retirees have on their mind. When you retire and begin taking Social Security, will government want to tax that? But wait, I already paid tax on that? Add to that, there's been some talk about not taxing Social Security at all. That's what we're going to get into today. Thanks for being here.
This is the Money Master Podcast.
Welcome back to the Money Master Podcast, everyone. Thank you for joining us here in the Dallas Metroplex area. I'm Connie, here with Nick and Tori, and today we're going to talk about Social Security. Not an exciting topic to talk about,
Social
right?
Security and taxes. Two very exciting topics.
Yes. So, Nick, I know that for about 15 years or so, you've taught on Social Security. You used to do live classes in our area and talk about this topic. It is something that
webinars, classes, Social Security is big.
Yeah.
It's a big key to people's retirement, right? And, now there's some new news about the potential of Social Security not being taxed. So it's on people's mind. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are the ins and outs?
Yeah. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about how Social Security is taxed.
Or people are surprised that it's even taxed in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Or who's going to be taxed on it more than others. Yeah.
Okay. So all these great questions that people have on their minds. So let's dig in. Let's start with, hasn't my Social Security already been taxed?
People feel like they treat it like a Roth. They think, well, I've already paid money, taxes on this money. And then so when I get it back out, I'm paying taxes on it again. So that they're thinking of it like that. And, that used to be true until 1984. And then we started taxing the benefits on Social Security. So they do get taxed. It's very misunderstood.
There are, a good percent of the population who are taking Social Security and don't pay tax on it because of their level of income. So it's not just a blanket statement.
50%, probably 50% of Americans do not pay taxes on their Social Security. Right now, 50% do. Right. In fact, the majority of people that we work with pay taxes on their Social Security.
It's not just a blanket statement of this is how much you're going to pay. There's a fine detail formula to figuring out if you're going to pay or not.
Break that down for us. Like, are there hard set rules? Like income this much, you pay this much on your Social Security? Like, talk me through that.
It's called your provisional income. So it's the income you have, and it includes other things. It includes like municipal bond interest income and things like that. There's some things that they throw back in. So it's called your modified adjusted gross income plus half of your Social Security. That's kind of the baseline formula of let's take that amount and what does that equal? And if it's over a certain amount, depending on if you're married or filing, married filing, don't, and you're single, then that's going to determine how much they pull up to be taxed.
And taxed at whatever your tax rate is at that point. So that determines
your highest marginal rate at that point.
How many dollars do get taxed, right? So there's a grid for that.
Right.
And so the grid is different depending upon if you're married or single. And interesting thing about that grid is that grid hasn't been changed in at least over a decade. So people complain and say, well, they're not really giving us an adjustment for inflation because we're getting more and more of our dollars that continue to be taxed, because get drawn in there. So, you want to kind of just break down those three buckets?
Yeah, because there's lots of numbers. So if you're single, if that provisional income is less than $25,000, you don't pay any tax on Social Security. If you're married, if it's below $32,000, no Social Security tax. So that's the 0% level. If you are single and you're between $25,000 and $34,000, or married $32,000 to $44,000, then 50% of your Social Security benefit will be taxed. And then if you're single and you're above $34,000 or married above $44,000, then 85% will be taxed.
Yeah,
wow.
Up to, yeah. So you think about it like in three buckets. I've heard people say, and we've often used this to explain that, and that is you've got a bucket that is not taxed, like a bucket of your Social Security money that's not taxed. Then you've got another bucket that's partially taxed, and that's that 50%. If all the dollars that fall in between those two numbers you were mentioning. So for single, 25 to 34,000. If you're married, 32 to 44,000. So that bucket is partially taxed. Mm-hmm. And then the third bucket, all of it's taxed or mostly taxed, but they cap it at 85%. So meaning if there was more dollars that were supposed to be dragged in, they stop at 85%. So even the wealthiest, person with the greatest amount of benefits and greatest amount of income, they have 85% tax, but not more.
So there's always at least a small portion that is not taxed at all.
At this point. Now, I always say that. Everything could change about this, and
Right.
they have made changes to this along the way. So, but yes, for now.
Yeah,
Okay.
two myths would be, one myth that people believe is, their benefits are not taxed. The other myth is that they think all of their benefits are taxed, right? And both of those are not true.
Right.
So Social Security taxes really can get confusing, and there's certain things that kind of trip people up. So talk to us about a couple of those things.
I think people don't always take into consideration what is going to be considered income in any given year and what that will cause, if that will cause more of their Social Security to be considered in that provisional income amount.
Right, because
or the taxable amount.
I think the thing that people don't realize the most is the extra income, like taking $1 from your IRA or $1,000 out of your IRA. It adds more Social Security to the formula. So it layers taxes. So if you think you're, in the 12% tax bracket, and then you decide to pull an extra $5,000 or $10,000 out, well, not only are you paying that 12% on the dollars you just pulled out of that IRA, but now you're also triggering more of that
provisional income is higher
to drag more dollars in. So then there's more dollars that are also getting taxed at 12% from Social Security. So and then if you have long-term capital gains, that also adds to that as well. So that's what we call a phantom tax.
People call this phantom tax because there's lots of little ways that income just creeps up, and then your Social Security also gets taxed heavier.
So is there a way to mitigate it? I mean, I know you can't just not have it happen, but are there tricks that people can learn to decrease it or keep it low?
I know here it's why we're consistently running tax projections for people and looking at their plan as a whole. Do you have a ton of money in an IRA where your RMDs are going to be huge down the road? Because that's just something that we can't get around the RMDs as a whole. Now we can do things to smooth out income maybe earlier in certain years, or, there's ways, yes, to help, but being aware of what might be coming in the future.
The RMD, required minimum distribution, that forces money out of the IRA or the 401k, which then makes more Social Security get taxed, right? So that's something to look out for. The other trick, I guess, as you ask, would be to look at your taxes and then look at what you're going to take out for the year. And if you have a choice to take it from different places, you can see, is that going to cause an unwanted tax consequence before you take it out? That's why Tori and I have bags under our eyes, because we've just been meeting with our clients. And, at the first part of the year, it's people who are retired. It's like, okay, let's look at how it's going to go for taxes before you take the money out this year. So in case you can avoid an unnecessary tax consequence.
And not even just not even just what they're taking out for their baseline, needs for income. But we've had people come and say, okay, well, I'm building a house. I need a big amount to put a down payment. And we're going to say, okay, well, that, say we need a large chunk of money to come out. Where's it going to come from? Because if you're taking a large amount from an IRA, that's all income. And so it's going to have an impact in more than just what you're paying in taxes on that amount.
Right. And, is there a way to be strategic about it? So
I think that this is a very interesting conversation, because oftentimes I'll talk to people who on the phone who are calling in, asking about our services, and they've been a DIYer for a really long time, and they've done a really great job. And they'll say things like, I've enjoyed doing it my way, but I'm to the point where I'm moving into retirement and there's pieces of the puzzle that I don't understand or that I feel like I will do incorrectly. And I feel like this might be one of those things.
Well, yeah, I think even us calling it phantom tax, like there are little nuances that could potentially sneak up on people when making these decisions.
You also asked about another, what can you do? Something else is money that comes out of a Roth does not cause more Social Security to be taxed. So if you identify a phantom tax, you're like, okay, I don't want to layer more taxes on top of this. I thought I was in the 12% tax bracket, but if I pull that money out, it's going to add more taxes on top of that, which I'm not actually paying 12%, even though, I am in the nominal 12% bracket. You're stacking more taxes on there for me. So instead, well, maybe I pull some of that money from my Roth, because then it doesn't trigger that extra Social Security tax. So sometimes people will say, well, I'm just going to use my Roth to pay for my vacations because it keeps me right below where I want to be with my taxes.
Hey there, this is a quick break to talk about how you pay yourself in retirement. People often ask about how much they're going to be able to spend each month from their savings when they're no longer working. You may have heard of the 4% rule, the bucket strategy, or nameless others, but none of them do a good job measuring your true spending capacity. That is, how much can you afford to spend each month confidently? I wrote a white paper you might want to read. It's about a guardrail system for retirement that can help you do better in retirement. And I think it's probably the best withdrawal strategy available. There's no cost to download and read it. If you want a copy, all you have to do is text the word income to our business line at 214-988-9178. That's it, just the word income, and send it to 214-988-9178, and we'll send that paper about guardrails straight to you.
All right, so the big what if right now, we've all been hearing about it a little bit in the news here and there, right? The question of could Social Security become tax-free? And what does that mean? What does that look like? Is that good? That's bad? Give us your feedback.
Well, half of people would be happy. The
Yeah.
half that are paying taxes, because some people already aren't.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
would impact some people, not all.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of people would be happy. And the criticism is how will we pay for it? Will we take tax money from some other area of a retiree's life? Will that cause changes to, maybe more charges to Medicare, right? Because right now we're, 25% of Americans are paying more for their Medicare because they have the means to, and it's means tested, right? So the question and the criticism is, how are we going to pay for that? Will it cause the Social Security trust to be deplete sooner, right? So great ideas, but the question always is who's going to pay for it, right? And how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So it sounds like an easy win for retirees, but
It'll play out somewhere.
in your guess, how likely do you think it is that it will happen?
Predict the future, right? Like
Yeah.
here we are in 2025. Trump has just made a whirlwind of things with his, the first, not even the first 100 days. I don't think it's.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, the verdict's out, but
Yeah. I don't know if that's one I would predict or not. I don't know if I
Yeah.
have a leaning on if that'll happen or
Let's
not.
get our crystal ball.
but I can tell you that, it would help a lot of retirees if, but again, it's not going to help the poorest of retirees. It's not going to help the average American, sadly, because, the way
They're
that it
already
is.
not paying.
Yeah, they're already not paying.
So let's just say if it did happen, would it affect how retirees should be planning for their taxes today?
Boy, we're so conservative. We should probably still plan for them the way they're going to be. And if,
Yeah, I think that's kind of we plan for this stuff to be as it is, and with some unknowns, right? Because unknowns happen, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't start planning against it right now.
well, especially because when we do plans, we're also planning for what happens if Social Security gets cut back to 76 pennies on the dollar, as people talked about. And so to be conservative, we can run a test for that as well to see what happens if we reduce our benefit in general. So, planning for things to be better is usually not something we want to do. We always want to plan for what if things are worse.
Well, and the flip side of that question, not just taking into Social Security alone, is everyone asks, well, taxes are going to go up in general, right? So, yeah, this one tax might lessen or go away, but we still got other things at play that I wouldn't say this is going to change the way we plan.
Okay. All right. So let's do a hypothetical, right? So let's say I'm 62 and I've just retired and I'm debating when to take Social Security. What's one move that I could make right now to avoid unnecessary taxes down the road?
I think if you were going to do one move, it would be consider what happens if you delay Social
I was
Security.
going to say it's a timing question for me first.
Yeah.
Is 62 the best time to take Social
Because it opens a window, because that window is for tax planning. And, let's just say you're not working and you're 62, because if you're working, then you have a problem with the earnings test. So if you make more than $22,000, it might be more than that now because it changes every year. Then they take away some of your benefit until you turn 67, right? So let's just say you do stop working at 62 and you don't take your Social Security. Delaying it opens that window for tax planning where you could spend IRA money early, which some people do, and that helps to smooth out the tax bill.
And RMDs down the road, reduce RMDs down the
Reduces
road.
those RMDs. B, you could use that window of time to do Roth conversions. Or C, you could use that window of time to do tax gain harvesting. So what is tax gain harvesting? Well, if you're going to sell a house and you're going to have to pay taxes on selling that house, you could, maybe have a window of money that doesn't get long-term capital gains tax.
Based on that tax bracket you're in for long-term capital gains.
Same thing with stocks.
Yep.
If you own Google stock that has $300,000 worth of gains in it, you could choose to live off of that money for a few years and pay little to no taxes on that gain, and rebalance your portfolio away from so much of one particular type of stock potentially. So there's a bunch of stuff you could do, I guess, if you just look at that window for tax planning purposes.
I'm going to sound real nerdy right now, but those are the years when we see a plan, when I see those low income years and I'm like, all right, this is where I can play a little bit. Like, what can we do? What can we accomplish in these years and be a little bit more strategic than just baseline withdrawal strategies?
Yeah, lots of choices.
Yeah, lots of choices, exactly, which we've covered a lot today. There's so many questions around Social Security, and it's important that when you're planning, you're coordinating all your other retirement savings together, right? It's not just we're looking at one specific thing, but we want to make sure everything is seamlessly working together. So if you've listened today and you have questions about your Social Security and how they play together with your other retirement savings, feel free to find us at brindleandbay.com. We'd love to chat with you. Thanks for listening. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment if you'd like, and share with your friends. Till next time.
Nick Davis is an investment advisor representative of Brindle Bay Financial Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This show is for informational purposes only. Any references to client experiences made may be deemed to be indirect testimonials. Clients were not compensated for providing any testimonial statements. Any references to client experiences are for illustrative purposes only. Actual client experiences will vary. Any exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered financial advice or recommendation to buy or sell a financial vehicle. You should consult a qualified financial tax or legal professional before taking any action. This program is not endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Brindle Bay Wealth Management is affiliated with Brindle Bay Financial Advisors.